According to one police
Okay.
officer, according to one police in Jamaica, that can be a rail gun in 5 minutes. So,
Mhm.
but they're considered prop guns. I think the firing pin and something else is taken out, so they can't fire live rounds.
Yeah, yeah.
They
So,
fire only blanks.
okay, so I have a question now. So, as
Yeah.
regards to the situation that happened with you know, Jesus, the Rust
Alec
movie,
Baldwin.
right?
Hmm.
Yes,
Alec
thank you.
Baldwin and
Yes, that movie, right? Is it a case? What would just to shed some light? Is it that whatever was supposed to be removed was not removed, or I'm not, I don't know if I fully get how
it
a
is
prop gun went off like that.
I will jump in and say give my opinion, and Kurt can give his opinion. My
Hmm.
opinion about this production, and somewhat like 60, 70 productions in the United States right now. There is a shortage of money. There's a shortage of crew. There is a
Yeah.
shortage of equipment. There's a shortage of everybody. And so there is a shortage. There is a lot of shortage of cuts that goes on. Obviously, these people were not good enough to be doing the jobs they were doing. I gather from one of the many articles that I've read that they were using the guns for recreational target practice out there in the desert. And that is how live rounds of ammunition got into the gun.
Oh my gosh.
And that is so ridiculous and absurd that, but they're in America and they're in the middle of the New Mexico desert. And everybody, there probably some people objected to it because you hear that this one was complaining, the other than that one. But my girl, who was the armorer, I see a picture of her with two guns set up, so like she in the wild, wild west.
Hmm.
And it was just totally out of order.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Just to chime in though, Shaniel, the other thing
Yeah.
about it as well is that, obviously, a new article or 7 is coming out every single
Yeah.
day, so it's a little bit hard to even tell what was the investigation is ongoing right now.
Mhm.
The reality is that as of yesterday or today, the investigation has revealed that they have found live rounds just on the set. There should never be a reason for live rounds to be on a set, period. So whatever was happening is recreational target practice or not. It's not so much a question of like, was the firing pin taken out, this, that, and the other. When Natalie talks about the triple checks and those sorts of things that are supposed to happen long before it even ends up in the actor's hands, the fact that this unfortunate incident happened at all, it's really it's just a symptom of a much, much bigger problem or a group of problems, because just moving through the investigation, the reality is that one of the first things I heard was that the AD went to a table that the armorer was not at. That's already one red flag. The armorer left the guns on the table unattended. The AD took up one of 3 guns. Another red flag. The AD don't take up the gun without approval from the armorer. And then the AD took the gun to set, said cold gun, handed that to the actor. Massive red flag. And then again, final thing now, the AD, as of today, has acknowledged that he did not, well, first I heard he did not check the gun, and that was supposed to be a quote in the New York Times. He said he did not check the gun. Then I see another article, I don't know if he has backtracked. He has said that he did not check the gun thoroughly. Now, the reality is that if you have not checked the gun, complacency is exactly what gets people killed. And in this situation, that is exactly what it was. Don't matter if there was a firing pin, no firing pin. It could have been a shotgun with all of the powder removed from the shell, but the wadding was still in there and someone got shot in the face. That can injure you just as badly or kill you. So if the guns have not been double, triple checked, the reality is that this is the sort of situation that can happen anywhere. Another one of the main issues, and as much as I feel it for Alec Baldwin, and I would feel it for any actor who was put into this situation, the other issue that remains is the fact that as most of us probably know by now, a lot of the crew went on strike. And basically most of the all of the unionized members of the camera department were gone. A bunch of people were told that they needed to leave or they'd be escorted off set. They brought on non-union people to handle certain jobs. So already the producers are shortcutting certain things. Why is that important to Alec Baldwin? he's a producer on the film.
Mm.
He's not just an actor. And so it makes you wonder.
Let me cut in on that, Kurt.
Mhm.
Actors who are producers really have no responsibility. I'll tell you that the way it is these days
No.
is that
Mhm.
if the actor don't take all his money up front,
Yeah,
he says, I want a producer credit, but he has nothing to do with producing the film and he's not
absolutely.
responsible. His contract, I just saw one of those contracts. It said,
Mhm.
I am not
Mhm.
liable for any
Here's the problem. Here's the
negligence
issue
on
with
the
that, though.
part of the producers. So
Here's the issue with that, though.
mm,
That maybe that is true on paper, but
Mm.
the very fact that we are not the only people having this conversation now, because on a piece of paper where people can't see the contract, people are
Yeah.
going, but Alec Baldwin was a producer and this
no,
that,
but
and the
you see
other.
that is a
So
misunderstanding of what a producer is these days.
no, absolutely,
Because you
absolutely.
can ask for a producer credit.
Mhm. No,
You can ask for a producer
absolutely.
credit and they might give it to you.
But
You
but the
know?
point that I'm making, though, the point that I'm trying to
Mm.
make is that when, and I knew me and Natalie was going back and forth. I'm gonna start throw stones after producers. Natalie
No,
is
no, no.
definitely
I am a
not one of
producer who
those, to be clear.
always have a
To be clear.
responsibility. I
And I'm not
always
trying
have
to get on your bad
responsibility.
side when you have so much
Yeah.
gun license, neither. But
Them expire.
but the fact of the matter is that, as I said, it's not in a typical situation, it is not the actor's responsibility. And I'm just talking from a layperson's point of view, because there's also a lot of blame being placed on Alec Baldwin, whether he's a producer or not, whether it's on paper, regardless of contract, people are blaming him. My point is that 3 people should have checked that gun before it was
but
put into the
Kurt,
actor's hand, period.
it's done immediately before.
Exactly.
They check it before, but as the actor sits there, he is supposed to see 3 people check that gun and hand it to him.
There
And
are different ways.
that is the sort of the general way that they say when it comes to weapons. It's supposed to be done in front of the person who they're handing the weapon to. Definitely in Jamaica, because
Mhm.
that is a totally illegal thing to hand a weapon to somebody else.
Yep. And I mean, I
Just
can
to,
explain even one of the more extreme forms of gun safety on a set is, I know for a fact that in certain places they will essentially triple check the gun. The gun gets put into a case. The case is sealed with wax, and if that wax is broken, that's not coming onto set.
yeah.
It is brought to the actor on
Wow.
set. The wax is broken right there in front of the actor, in front of the crew, and it's still checked. But the point is, though, if that wax is broken, it's not even making it onto the set. So that is how careful people are, and understandably so, because as we've seen, unfortunately, from this incident, a slip up can cost people their life. The director is still in hospital. He could have been dead too.
I have a question.
All because of carelessness.
I have a follow-up to that. And you know, I heard you guys mention the fact that the producer talent slash, you know, really and truly not really a producer. But I mean, who will they who is gonna be blamed? Is it Alec that's gonna be
A
in
lot
issues
of people.
here?
No, a lot of people.
Because I do know
Production.
that
Alec,
one of the
mm-mm.
I do know one of the procedures that the armorer is supposed to be the one that did all of those things that the AD did. I know that. So I guess right from the back, he is liable. But I mean, in the sense that, sorry, what was that? Natalie?
She.
I mean, my bad. Yes, I meant to say she. Yes, but you know, with all of those in mind, is it that they might charge multiple people, or like
Absolutely.
I've been following the story really and truly.
Absolutely. The reality is that Alec Baldwin will have to live with this for the rest of his life as the person who pulled the trigger, but he will more than likely face the least consequences, because you can't charge him with gross negligence. And the reality is that the AD taking up the gun without thoroughly checking it, admittedly no, not checking it or not thoroughly checking it, gross negligence. The armorer leaving the guns out for somebody else to take up, could have been anybody. Suppose they had I believe the plot of the movie is something about a 13-year-old boy accidentally killing somebody, which is just horribly ironic. But that means that they had children on set and the guns were left unattended. Gross negligence. So there's a lot more going on, unfortunately, than just a trigger was pulled and there was a live round in there, or there was something wrong with the gun, or whatever the case may be. But no, it will definitely be multiple people. I don't know. Natalie probably knows. There was a case as well years ago about, Natalie, you know, the train incident where with that other crew on Midnight Rider,
Yeah.
where essentially they went to a train track. They did not seek permission. And basically there was a train on the tracks that came along that was off schedule. They were having some sort of dream sequence for this film, different film, as I say. And they placed a whole bed on the tracks that was supposed to give them an hour and a half, maybe, of shooting time before they had to exit. Everything was set up, and then they heard a train coming down the tracks. And unfortunately, one of the camera assistants was killed because they couldn't get everybody off of the tracks in time. So the train hit her. She's dead as it. All because the AD signed off on that, producer signed off on that, director signed off on that. So a lot of people.
Shortcut, draw blood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shortcut, draw blood.
Yeah.
But I have a question as well, just asking you, Natalie, to outline then what would you say who are the key persons first before it gets to the AD? Because it sounds like there are a lot of people involved in this process. So for example, clearly the producer is probably top of chain. And then there is the legal agencies or associations locally that you get involved. There is the fight, for example,
it depends.
Jampro,
It
FLA.
depends. Yeah, as Darren said, it goes through a lot of processes. There's the Ministry of Security, and also let me go to what Darren said there, because where they Darren had stated the different.
It's above here. Would you like me to read it, Natalie?
Yes, read it and see what he says. That's where you
He said. He's Darren Tennant. So he said, on a smaller scale, the procedure for acquiring a permit for prop gun is issued by the Ministry of National Security. Jampro assists with the facilitation, but the onus is on the producer to follow through and follow up with the ministry directly.
Yes, and that is true. But I think, for example, in New Mexico, the production company will be the ones taking gross negligence. But the AD and the armorer will be charged with manslaughter. Unfortunately,
more than likely, yeah,
they will be charged with manslaughter.
So on set, then, what is the team makeup on set? Like, for example, even on a smaller scale, it's in terms of the checks and balances: producer, armorer, AD.
On a smaller scale, it is the armorer who the producer gives the responsibility to carry on the set. And that armorer will probably always have the police with him. So between the armorer and the police, so that there is a witness to whatever happens there. Because right now in Jamaica, we are using a rail gun. So it has to be triple checked.
And also, I mean, you know, as I said, I mean, I've been on smaller things with an armorer where the armorer's assistant checks it first, hands it off to the armor. They check it as well. It gets handed to the AD. I've been trained how to check certain weapons. You cannot hand me no M16 and be like, all right, let's XYZ, because there's also different ways to check different weapons. My understanding of, say, even a semi-automatic rifle, the chamber has to be cleared 5 times before you can actually declare it being safe. But then one of the most important things, and this is very important because it is different for different places, and each set, be it Jamaica, abroad, wherever, there's you know, set culture, you know, and unfortunately, like the set culture in New Mexico is obviously very lax. But the reality is that no matter what set you're on, let's say you're the actor, doesn't matter if you're the 13-year-old child, doesn't matter if you're 60-odd, 70-odd-year-old Alec Baldwin. If you have experience or you don't have experience with guns, you still have a right, after all of the checks have been done, not just the actor, but any crew member whatsoever. If you do not feel safe, any crew member has the right to say, I would like to see the gun checked again. And that weapon is to be brought over to them. The barrel, everything that needs to be checked, the cartridge, everything needs to be shown that it is cleared, that the clip is empty. All of the, whatever the procedure is with that specific type of gun needs to be run through. If any crew member requests it, it does not matter if you're even a PA, because at the end of the day, that gun is getting pointed somewhere and it's not supposed to be directly at somebody, but the gun is getting pointed somewhere. So it depends. My understanding of the shot in Rust was that it was a sort of a close-up of the weapon being raised towards camera. I can't tell you, I wasn't on the set. I don't understand exactly how it was laid out. I do understand that it was a rehearsal, but I also know for a fact that I've also had to do that exact same sort of shot with someone shooting to camera. What we did, and again, I cannot speak to what was done on Rust. I don't know how they set it up, but what we did was we purposely put the camera much further away, like a good 15, 20 feet. We put on a much longer lens, so it's still a close-up that they want. The person was not even handed the gun, but the DP started rolling. We handed them the gun after checking and everything, of course. And the DP had started rolling and he walked away. I personally told the DP didn't want to be there anyhow, but I told him I didn't want him behind the camera anyhow. And so the person raised the gun, pulled the trigger, bang. That's how we got the shot. Lower the gun, cut when the DP comes back. And then we did it over and over like that. But the DP was never behind the camera because God forbid something like this happened. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you were pulling focus from my face to my hand. The focus puller is not near the camera. Anybody who works on set knows that with a focus puller. So nobody actually has to be by that camera. Well, no, yeah, nowadays. Nobody nowadays needs to be behind that camera once we have hit rolling and that action is happening, you know. So how the DP was there, how the director was in line with them so that the bullet went through, you know, I'm simply saying they didn't have to be there.
They didn't expect a gunshot. That's it. They didn't expect
they may not
that
have expected a gun. Well,
because they didn't think there was anything in the gun.
But regardless, though, I mean, but if we're here talking about set safety, though, the fact is,
we have to. No, I understand.
Once that trigger is being pulled, if the director wants a trigger pull for the shot, and it's being aimed at camera, you shouldn't be anywhere within the radius of that gun.
And I must admit that there's one other thing, Kurt, that Capo does. He makes sure that the person handling the gun knows how to handle a gun. And he does that when I've worked with him, he has always made sure of that and gone over with the actor. This is where the bullets go. There are none in there. This is, you know, he makes sure that the person, you know, and I respect him for that because he does take his job very, very seriously, which he has to.
It's something that, unfortunately, though, again, you know, when we talk about certain set culture, you know, I know people overseas who shoot for, you know, stuff in the States, and I mean, like they've worked on stuff with like guns all the time, and there is unfortunately, and again, Natalie, I'm not throwing stones after no specific producers, but there is unfortunately a culture of bullying as well, because when it comes down to the idea that money is being burned the longer we take to the XYZ, if the armorer or whoever, that entire department dealing with the weapons, wants half an hour, there's sometimes a producer, unfortunately, saying, no, we don't have time for that. Like 10 minutes. All I can give you is 10 minutes.
Shots fired.
No, if you have 10, but again,
you're too liar on truth. Producers are not on set. It's the ADs who make those decisions.
Certain producers. No, but listen, it's a reality. It's a reality.
I know.
Yes, the ADs can get involved, but then again, there's also this massive conversation. It gets different, not just with each country or each set. Not just with each country, but with each set. There's also a back and forth of, like, you know, the producer versus the AD. Because for me, if a producer is telling me that, listen, you have one more shot and that's it, director get joke. If I was going to give the director 3 more shots and the producer tells me 1 more, that's it. If the director or the producer has been running overtime now for hours, and I know that, like, you know, we're not getting paid for this and the crew is getting miserable and it's an unsafe working situation, I will call that. That is now my call. If the producer wants to fire me and hire somebody else who's willing to be negligent, then that's their business. But I cannot, as an AD, literally shut down the set I can say that the crew is not happy. I can say that the crew does not want to do this. In certain situations, I mean, possibly, I don't know how that goes specifically, Natalie, because obviously I've worked on a lot of stuff, but I've worked primarily in Jamaica, and every producer is different. Every producer is very different.
It's something, I mean, the thing is that who calls it? The problem is coming down to squeezing a production into a cost. And we do that a lot in Jamaica.
A lot,
I used to do it. And, you know, and I stopped doing it, I mean, about 6-7 years ago, when it's not worth it, because the quality of the work that you're throwing out is not going to be as good. And we take extra hours. We squeeze something that is a 2-day shoot into 1 day because we only have 1 day's money. And irregular production, I mean, music videos have got to have some regulation. Right now, they have none. They do as they please. They work 24 hours straight from day one. From jump, they used to do that. They work long hours. They work unsafe things because they want just that shot. And of course, they're overshooting because that's what music videos do. So the thing is that I think they need more regulation than maybe the commercial producer. But still, the commercial producers have to understand that it's all well and good to say the client ain't gonna pay the money. So, you know, we have to do it for this. And we really need the work. Or we need to do it for this because we need to, you know, to get it done. We have to start thinking about safety. Let us not have an accident dictate to us.
I think
because
that
an accident can dictate to us. Go ahead.
I think just as a quick thing, you know, because even talking about what you say about the music video situation is true.
Yeah.
But to even just make a very, very distinct, you know, difference between the producer and the AD, because everybody looks at, you know, the top of the ladder, the above the line people. And to be clear, the producer's job is you know, hiring the crew, juggling the money, all of that stuff, which is one of the main reasons why, of course, the producer is in charge. And the producer, if them say, that's it, their word is law. But at the same time, the AD's job is not just, and I think this is a lot of the reason why a lot of people out here don't hire an AD sometimes for their productions and think that, oh, we just can't afford one. They assume that the AD's role is to simply keep you on schedule. That is not the case. So if you work for certain companies who you find that the producer has already done a schedule for the shoot, and so as a result, we don't need an AD, that's totally not the case, because the AD's job is not just to keep you on schedule. The AD's job is to look out for the health and safety of the crew as well. So that not just in terms of are we going over on the schedule, but where are we shooting? Are we shooting beside a highway? Are we shooting beside water and somebody can't swim? Are we shooting beside, when we did Top Boy, there was a safety officer on there that I had to keep back and forth in with. And he wanted to know what sort of insects were in this specific cane piece that were out here, because if someone gets stung by a centipede versus getting stung by a bee, does anybody have allergies? Do we have any anti-bee venom on set? All of that kind of stuff. And these are the questions that the AD has to go through with different people. We talk about, I'm getting now to the safety briefing, I realize, but, you know, so, but I mean, just to even just show you certain things. So, all right, I did a job that was out by the highway leading out to Ocherius. With 2 buses worth of people, cars, obviously live traffic and stuff. We have 2 police with us. People overestimate the police as well, because the police also, when I work with them, and especially when it's police officers that I have worked with on quite a number of occasions, they don't necessarily make a move without talking to me first, because they want to know exactly what is going on. Do they need to lock down anything? What do they need to lock down? When do they need to lock it down? So I called everybody together for the safety briefing, load up myself as usual, explain moving traffic, this, that, and the other. This is what's happening. This is where we're going. I want everybody here. You're in the bus unless I call you to set, blah, 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 everything. It's a highway. Within 2 hours of shooting, there were 2 people who them and their departments will remain unnamed, who are sitting on the island in the middle of the highway. This is the bridge going out of town, like if you're going to the toll. You know that when you go under the bridge, there's like a island that's about like 2 feet tall. And there's 2 gentlemen just sitting in the middle of the island, traffic passing back and forth. I mean, you've had the safety briefing. So it's not just about, stuff happening on set, and accidents do happen, but then you also have idiots who, despite all common sense, and these are people who are older than me, and you would think that they would know better, have decided that the best place to go sit, including underneath some trees in the shade beside a place where the cooler is and you can get liquor water, was the island in the middle of the highway. So there's a reason that we do the safety briefings. There's a reason that the briefings are important. Another quick story, another film we're doing, feature film, armor is on set. We've double, triple checked every single gun. We have 5 guys in front of us. These guys are supposed to be, the bad man's henchmen, XYZ, because they always have to have them. And we're handing out different types of guns. However, before we've handed them out, 10-minute speech from the armor, 10-minute speech from me in regards to the safety. You do not point it at anybody, explaining the whole crew has now seen that these weapons are safe. You do not point it at anybody. You do not even lift a gun until it is time to go and somebody says action. We're handing out the guns. I handed it to the second person out of 5. By the time I went to the 4th, the second person who I handed a shotgun to raised it up and went just in a general direction. Maybe he was aiming it at somebody, maybe he wasn't, doesn't matter. Fired him on the spot, took the gun back, found another extra. People are people. And there's a reason that things happen on set. There's a reason why there's no such thing as going overboard for safety. When we were on Bond and you had literally hundreds of people on set, and we know that we're going to do a stunt on, the next 3 days, there was rehearsal for those 3 days for the stunt. I'm not talking about somebody jumping a fence or something like that, obviously, but a car chase, a boat chase, a this, that, and the other XYZ. I'm not trying to spoil anything for anybody, but the reality is that 3 days worth of, not just 3 days worth of rehearsals, but a whole second unit were the people who did the real stunts. Everybody else, the first unit, because I got to work on both. The first unit are the people who Daniel Craig walks in and he delivers the dialogue. The second unit is a wide shot of Daniel Craig's stunt double walking down the beach before he delivers the dialogue. It's the car chase stuff. It's everything from a distance. It's stuff that blows up. It's when the guns are going off. That is the kind of thing that second unit deals with, but second unit is even more careful than the first unit because they're doing the stuff that really could get people hurt. So, I mean, it's a thing. And obviously that is budget. And when you can afford to do 3 days worth of, rehearsals, that's wonderful. But I think that we're coming from a culture where all of us, from Natalie's level to any PA that is just starting off right now, all of us know what it is in this industry locally to be at a point where you kind of have to make us see what we can do, how we can work this out, how we, we don't have this, we need that, make we try with this. But at the same time, it's not worth somebody's life. It's never worth somebody's life just because you were trying to get a film done, because you were trying to get a commercial done, So McIntyre to everyone. 1, conduct, I'm not sure who this is, but true, conduct yourself in a much, is Marlon. Well done. Transportation capital.
And Army.
Conduct yourself, and Army, yes, true. Marlon is basically saying, 1, conduct yourself in a mature and responsible manner. That is one of the most important things. But as I said, even with the example of me handing the guy the shotgun, you cannot always guarantee who you're hiring. Treat all firearms as if they are loaded. 3, never point a firearm at anything unless you plan to destroy it. Now, that 3rd rule is not even a set thing. That is a general rule of firearms.
Yeah.
So if I hand you a gun on set, no matter how many times it has been checked, if I do not tell you to point the gun in that direction, specifically, usually at a tennis ball or something, we're being super specific about it, then you don't lift the gun. You just don't. So, thank you for that, Marla.
Hi, guys. Kurt, before you continue, I'd just like to say there's another question in the chat. So Annalisa Chapman, she asks, so the triple check out here is normally done by the armorer and policeman on set in tandem with the AD?
I mean, yes, pretty much. Yeah, mostly, to be clear though, mostly by the armorer, and for legal purposes. Yes, Natalie, the policeman obviously is there as well. So the policeman definitely has to check and see that it is
But
clear.
this is an off-duty policeman normally, because this
Yeah.
is not
Mhm.
a legal procedure. And I'm going to say it out loud. This is not a legal procedure. Don't believe that because you have an armor and a policeman on the set, probably the gun owner as well, if the owner is not the armorer, that this whole procedure is legal. It is not. You have no right under any circumstances to hand a weapon to somebody else. Your weapon that's licensed to you to somebody else. So, but that's how we do it here, and we've done it for a while. And I think it's I think it's safe, but we have to make it legal.
But it's as I said, I feel like even at this level, we're still in this unfortunate position where, because there's nothing set up in a concrete manner, and obviously those things are hopefully, they're being put in place. They will be put in place, especially after this.
Oh yes.
But we're still doing this kind of Tonya Han McFashion type of thing, and the most that we can do is be as safe as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And as Marlon said, it's you have to conduct yourself in a mature and responsible. It doesn't matter if you're the AD. It doesn't matter if you're the armorer. If you know that the gun is being pointed in that direction for the scene and you're a PA, you don't walk that way to go to the cooler. Grant it's the AD's job to explain to everybody the weapon is being pointed in this direction. It's been cleared, but nonetheless, nobody will crosses this. You put a PA at each end to make sure nobody can pass them, etc. And you have a firing line that, God forbid something happen, you're hitting a tree. But the reality is that it is everybody's responsibility to be safe on set. I really do want to point out though that, like I said, Shawnee asked something about, and I see your hand up, Bev. I'll give you a hand over to you in a second. Shawnee had asked initially, like what was the thing, like was a firing pin not supposed to be in this, that, and the other. When we talk about set safety, it goes way beyond guns. It goes way, way, way beyond guns. That's why I give the example about the island in the middle of the highway. You know what I mean? There has to be a certain respect for the crew, respect for the AD, respect for the safety of everybody as an individual. There has to be, but also when it comes to things like Natalie says with working hours, and I mean, I direct as well. I've done some hella long shoots, just like everybody else. You know what I mean? I'd like to think that the majority of my shoots don't last as long as, they don't often go past the 12-hour mark, but 12 hours is still a decent amount of time. I had a very recent shoot that went way longer than 12 hours that we won't talk about, but the reality is I still checked in on as many of my crew members as I could. My producer checked in on as many members of the crew as we could. We made sure that we had a letter from Jafta to ensure that anybody gets stopped by police, they're legal to be on the road and headed back home at whatever time of night. But the reality is that you still don't want to do that. And we find that people end up doing that when they know they have a 2-day shoot, a 3-day shoot. We have a culture, especially in the commercial industry, of trying to please the client to the detriment of the crew. I have personally seen many agencies put a 5-day shoot into a 3-day shoot or a 2-day shoot. And as the AD who's supposed to be, when I think all I do is the schedule, I'm looking at the schedule going, this is too much for 2 days. And I've been told, listen, well, you just have to make it work.
It's a very unfortunate reality that we need to really shift. Kurt, you touched on the scenarios in which the checks aren't done, but because Natalie mentioned risk, which I think is a key word. What if the checks are done? Because what if due diligence, everything happens, and then, God forbid, meaning you're using a live round clearly, and something like this happens? Where does that responsibility lie? I think I saw a conversation in the chat the other day in the film group chat about Brandon Lee's incident, in which they did the necessary checks. They thought everything was right, but then some residue or something was left back that cost someone their life. What happens in that case?
All right. Well, first of all, well, with the
I know it's a
branding
loaded
situation-
question, but yeah.
No, not at all. Because, well, I'll tell you the truth.
In more ways than one.
Yeah, it's good. With the Brandon Lee situation, it actually wasn't as cut and dry as that, because what actually happened with that, my understanding is that the armorer chose to make their own blanks. And what they did was they essentially took the powder out of the shells, but they left the primer at the back. So what actually happened in that situation was, technically, yes, you have a blank, but what happened was the primer got hit by the hammer and the first shell got stuck in the barrel. So it was not actually that first shot that killed it. It was when the next round got chambered, primer got hit, and the force of that blasted the thing out like a proper bullet. So the reality is, were the blanks done properly? Probably not. But your question though, specifically though, really is, what if you do all of your checks and balances and something unfortunate happens? The reality, unfortunately, is that things do happen, and accidents can happen, and that's why we have to be so careful. But that's also why there is always and there should always be an investigation, just like what is happening on Rust. You don't want to turn around and just say, well, it's just the AD's fault because they pick up the thing and then just hand it to the, no, but where was the armor? Why was there live ammunition in the first place? When they pulled the slug out of the girl's shoulder, they realized this is a real bullet. This was not a badly made blank. This was a real bullet. So it's the actual investigation that has to reveal what happened. And the fact is, I'm not a lawyer, but the fact is that if everybody did their proper checks and balances, and it came down to just being a horribly unfortunate incident, I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't be able to live with myself even if I knew that I did every aspect of my job. Even if I knew that, like, the armorer did every aspect, you'd have probably just hear say I quit Phil.
But
because
you know,
I don't.
It's accidents happen. You know, accidents happen in this life. Accidents do happen. Protection of people from accidents is something that we have to try our best. We have to take as much risk, but we also have to have that insurance.
Yeah.
You have to have insurance, and that, I mean, you know, it might, people might say, but how am I going to afford? I mean, I'm still paying insurance. I don't work this year. I don't work one day this year, but I still had to pay $1 million worth of insurance, because when I go on to a job next year, I have to be able to renew employer's liability insurance for my crew.
Natalie, and the rest of you, sorry, I butt in. I've been waiting a while, and I really.
All right,
no, sorry, go ahead. You were waiting.
I wanted to raise the issue of insurance. I was on early, but was in another meeting, so I wasn't as focused. I'm not sure if it was mentioned before, but the business of insurance for crew members is one of the things. I am not yet quite at the level where some of you are, but I've done quite a bit, and I've been in situations where the client, because of the nature of the situation, literally asks that all my crew members are insured before coming on. And I literally have to look for insurance. I don't have an ongoing insurance, but for that particular situation. And the setting was so risky that anything, as you say, accidents happen. And where are we? Some persons think of it and some persons are forced to think of it, but we may do a lot, but where are we? How are we getting to the next level, or when? What happens for insurance for crew members? And just really advice on that for members of
Jafta. Sean Neal is being very quick to point out a reminder that Jafta offers insurance, and you can email Jafta to get more information.
That's not the same insurance. It's liability insurance. Which is something that the producers should carry. And you know, if you have a company, and I'm sure Tash will tell you that companies like Tash and Saeed have to carry employer's liability, which covers your crew, and also public liability, because things can happen to the public that is your fault too. If a car crash on the highway because you were shooting on the highway, you are responsible. So they have public liability and employers liability. Is this offered for individual producers outside of companies based on each job? I'm not quite sure, but they should. I mean, somebody could tell me. I don't know.
That's actually a good question. I don't know. I know we have it likewise for the company,
Yes.
but that's a pretty good question.
I got something done, but
you can get it. Sorry,
it was rather difficult, but I got it done on that occasion. And
Oh, I think Noel said it actually exists. You can get it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just jumping in. Oh, angles. Just really quickly saying, like, when I've been independently producing or being the production manager for another producer, I've seen the producer get insurance for the particular job. Fraser Fontaine does it, where you can get employees liability, public liability for the job. It does add to your budget, but not to the extent that you might think. It's unfortunate that I do still see clients, the first thing that they want to cut is, do we really need the insurance?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. But it is possible to get it.
Yes, I remember Fraser Fontaine used to do it. Yes, you could have just walked across the room, if you think you just see in the background. Yeah,
I said she's anywhere around.
I saw her on the couch over so. The insurance policy is very important, and Fraser Fontaine used to offer it for $100,000 for short-term films coming in. But I should add that, feature films coming in here now are asking us to carry $5 million worth of employers' liability and 10 million of public liability. And that is a very expensive thing but that's for features. So, I mean, it's something we have to start thinking about for 2022, where probably our company will have to have that as a full-time policy. But for the smaller companies, I think if Fraser Fontaine offers it, you should look into it, and you should make clear that that you have to get it. It was $100,000 back then, which is not a bad amount of money, to cover both crew and employers for what they were being paid. Maybe it will be a little more now because the crew is paid more. But there are certain crew members who get $100,000 a day. So.
And Philippa has also left a specific name in there. So ask for Dale one list when you call.
And he should,
But as I said, I mean, sorry, Tash, go ahead. You were saying something.
No, I was going to mention Philippa and then ask both you and Natalie to just like give you your pointers, like top 5 things, checks and balances from the producer standpoint, in general about safety on set, specifically as we're talking about weapons and guns, and you as well from the AD standpoint, top 5.
I think it's very important to have a risk assessment of every single film that you do. When you're looking at the script, when you're looking at what you're going to do, where you're going to shoot it, how many people are going to be there, what you need to make it work, you should have a risk assessment and not just pass over it. We do this all the time, so that's no big thing. Specifically when it comes to weapons, we just have to be very careful until we make it do something legal. And we have to understand that the producer has the responsibility. We have the responsibility for the overall responsibility for ensuring that the crew is safe. And don't pass over the long hours, because when the crew leaves you to go home after working 16 hours, it's one of the biggest risks that we take.
Honestly, I don't think that I have a top 5. I think it's a lot simpler for me, because I mean, as Natalie said, one of the main thing is if you need to do a risk assessment, even if that risk assessment, and I'm not saying this is the best practice, but even if that risk assessment is just taking a genuine look at your shoot doesn't have to have guns on it, but you're working at a beach, everybody can swim. Like, stop and think about the common sense things that are required. It's also why I stress the fact that, like, a lot of people out here, I do not think have an understanding of what the AD's job is. And I say that meaning, like, not just average Joe who wants to do a music video, but production companies as well. I've done work with production companies who didn't know what 10-1 means. And you realize it's a completely different world. Their whole thing is the client gave us a budget to do this thing. We said we're going to do it Wednesday. It has to edit by Thursday to be on air by Friday. And we're going to do what the client wants. Okay, but again, that's a 3-day job in a bunch of different locations. There's something involving a car driving. Can your talent drive, or are them still on a learners? Or can they drive? There's so many things to consider, and your AD is a part of that. So when you think to yourself, oh, well, the director did a shot list and the producer did the schedule, so we're good. You're missing out a massive part of your production. You are. The next most important thing, which Natalie has already touched on as well. I give you all a quick story because it's about the hours. It's about the hours. I went onto a job months ago. Again, not calling a name, but at the end of the day, it's very important because it cut me deep. I went onto a job where we were shooting out of town. We were late to leave in Kingston, specifically because the producer was late. The entire crew was there waiting. We got to where we were going, past curfew. Nobody had eaten. We had to Jim screech our way into a place to go get food that happened to be around the corner. We have not been checked into a hotel as yet. This is now past midnight. It reached 1:30 in the morning. Half the crew has been checked in. And basically when I said, listen, this can't work because we need to move the call time up. As a matter of fact, me and the DP also said, this can't work. Call time was supposed to be 7 a.m. So that means you need to wake up at 6 a.m. for that. It's 1:30 in the morning now. Basically, the crew is going to get a 4.5-hour turnaround. That's not just not right. It's not supposed to be legal either. And this was a commercial shoot, not a music video. Both of us objected to it. We were told, well, we will go and set up things and then we will send a bus back for you at 10 a.m. For who? For the AD and the DP. No, not what we are saying. I will burn myself out during the night looking out for my crew. What I'm saying is you're burning out your crew. The response that I was given is in front of the crew in a hotel lobby at 1:30 in the morning by the producer. It's my expletive crew. You don't tell me how to run my expletive crew. As a result, called the director and I said, listen, this is what is going on. I'm not going to be a part of the shoot. And I said it in front of the crew as well, because we're now out of town. We've been driven here. And I'm saying, I'm not going to be a part of this because I'm not going to have somebody driving off the road, falling asleep at the wheel when this job is done, because the producer will not compromise the shoot. Call the director, I let them know what was going on. And the director's response was, we can't compromise the shoot. So again, I said, but you're compromising your crew. Long story short, I was told, have a safe drive home. And me, the DP, the camera assistant, who, by the way, has fallen asleep driving home from a long job already, went home the next morning, and the jib operator. All 4 of us went home. So I know as the AD, must put someone into a position who has already fallen asleep at a wheel. I must, in good conscience, allow myself to be a part of that happening again. Then what I found out afterwards was 2 things. On the way out of town, the producer fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh.
And we had wondered, we didn't know, nobody knew, but we had wondered, and we had wondered why we had pulled over for a second. That's what happened. Secondly, they ended up turning a 2-day shoot into a 1-day shoot, the same people who wouldn't compromise the job, and they put up the crew. So good on them, except the person who had to carry the jib from Kingston out of town left at 4 o'clock in the morning, got to set, worked the entire day, and then had to pack up that jib and drive back to town because they had a shoot the next day. So you put up almost everybody on the crew and you still risked somebody else's life. This is my point why I say it's not just about guns. The guns are a bigger part of the problem. And if any member of that crew, let's say the AD, let's say the armorer, had to go on to another job right afterwards, now running off of 4.5 hours worth of sleep or less, that now makes them careless on someone else's job because they're falling asleep. We need to care about our people long before we care about the end game of the shoot. Everybody wants to deliver the client the best we can do. I definitely do. Whether I'm ADing or whether I'm directing, whether I'm writing, whether I'm shooting, it doesn't matter. I want to do the best thing that I can do. But I'm not doing it to sacrifice anybody on my crew's life or your crew's life because it's not my expletive crew.
Yeah.
That's all that I'm saying. It's way more than the guns. The guns are a big part. They're a big part. But we have to stop prioritizing the money over people's lives because that is also why the guns get shortcutted. Rust simply did not want to hire a proper armorer. They just didn't want to.
They probably couldn't afford it though. I mean,
Yeah.
They couldn't afford
I don't
it.
want. Yeah, I
They couldn't
couldn't
afford it.
They couldn't afford it. Rust.
Yeah.
Rust is
Low budget too. Small.
very low budget.
I mean,
It's low budget, but in the words of Trevor Noah, though, Trevor Noah said, if you can't afford guns, proper armor, why are you shooting a
Using
story
real
about guns? Go and shoot
Yeah.
a love story. Go and shoot stuff.
Exactly.
You know?
I mean,
That's right.
I think the two key words that stood out of this conversation for me tonight are risk and responsibility. And I think that really summarizes what safety is on set. I know we were specific about guns, but both Natalie and Kurt, you touched on the all-encompassingness of it, which is, it includes locations, general atmosphere, general protection of people, and risk assessment. And it's funny because in the corporate world or day-to-day business, we have to do that. And it's simply just applying that to every set life, you know. We have to ensure the occupational health and safety of our staff and persons who enter the premises or work for us are guided by laws. And I think it's something that we should bring across in everything we do. Always thinking about risk and responsibility. And I'll say, while this incident, very unfortunate as it is, probably jolted us, it is a reminder of the big responsibility we carry when we hire people and bring them on set. That it's almost like a mother to a child. I'm not joking, but I think we have to think of it like that and ensure that we do our due diligence with the checks and balances. Get an AD, as Kurt would say. Ensure.
It don't have to be me either, you know. I'm not selling myself.
I'm
I'm just saying, for God's sake,
but
get
generally, it helps across the board. Insurance and insurance. And a lot of our fellow colleagues, you know, just gave us gems or links to this person. And I'll just reinforce that in wrapping up our discussion. You know, I think Philippa had said Dale Wanley, or somebody had said Dale Wanley from
Fraser
Fontaine.
Yeah.
Saeed also said from Caribbean
There's
Assurance Brokers, Lemar James, and I'm sure there are many more. I know we have used, thinking back in the freelance days, I did use Allied, and I'm going to just share that link as well, because, you know, they do come in handy. And I know it was just a little bit under 100,000 at that time, which is probably 4 years ago, and inflation, what have you, it might have increased over time. I'm seeing in the chat where somebody asked what 10-1 was. And
it's been answered.
It's been answered. And for those of you who don't know, it's a short bathroom break, as Philippa puts it.
I forgot timing.
But yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was very insightful, and it really helped me as a producer at times, you know, to just be guided on the proper protocols in place for what is really a huge responsibility and a dangerous weapon, you know, because we do use guns. I just wanted to thank, from the bottom of our hearts, from the entire board, both Natalie Thompson and Kurt Wright, for just sharing and taking us on this journey in bringing our minds to the reality of the situation and the space that we live in. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of follow-up questions. We can put them in the chat. I'm sure Jafta will do our part in ensuring whatever is possible on our end to, you know, put this information forward, whether it is trying to seek some partnerships with insurance brokers or agencies to get this accessible to the wider community. I also wanted to just give a few updates on ongoing and upcoming initiatives that we have. So for those of you who know about the Spotlight Short JA project, I wanted to let you know that we are actually in full production right now. A few have been shot already, and you can expect to see announcements on screenings and just general marketing information around those selected. Absolute Power, which is the name of one short led by producer Jeline Kennon, with writer-director Gemar McFarlane is one, Boy Girl, and All the Rest is another one led by producer-director Nadine Rawlings with docu-writer Maylin Lowe. I Was Only 12, led by producer Ryan Campbell with director David Johnson and docu-writer Janelle Powell, and Kindle, led by producer-director Frank O'Neill and Stephanie Lyle with docu-writer Nicanor Gordon. And for context, for those who don't know, Spotlight Initiative is a global initiative against gender-based violence, and Spotlight Shorts, JA, is being led by UNICEF in association with Jafta. So stay tuned for official posts and the films. And those are pretty much our updates and initiatives. I don't know if our president has anything to say, Sir Saeed. But I just want to thank you guys as always for being a part of the community and coming out to, you know, sharing these conversations that are so relevant, timely, and help us to move forward generally as a unit. Apply to Film Lab. Yes, Annalisa put in the chat. Ensure you apply to Film Lab. The deadline has been extended to mid-November, so do apply. I know we're looking for producers, script editors, director writers. All right. Yes, everybody bigging up Natalie and Kurt in the chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But here ends our meeting for this evening. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks again, everyone. And I hope you are all home and safe.
Anytime, guys.
You
Great
are
session.
most welcome, Jafta.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye.
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 Good night.